Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. Today is day one of patch 10.2 PTR, and with it came a lot of information. A handful of changes to Warlock, Destro, Demo, and Aff, as well as tier bonuses. We've got a lot to get into. So tonight's video, we're going to be reviewing the Warlock changes as well as tier sets. Now, this week there's going to be a lot going on video-wise. You've got a tier testing video, damage testing video, a feedback video, probably a Demonology video. We'll get into that in a little while. A raid review video. There's going to be a lot coming. This PTR already looks pretty progressed, so we'll see where things go. Now, before we get too far in the video, I want to mention a couple of things. The 10.2 Warlock PTR spreadsheet, I haven't started it yet, but it's going to be going up probably, I'd say, within probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks or so, excuse me. The tier 3 Felgar rank of page round or higher does get early access to that. This PTR is pretty far along. We can already test out tier gear, and it's day one, so we're going to get that rolling fast. I would assume raid testing is likely coming soon as well. So all of that, if you're interested in that, links to Patreon and things up here. At the same time, we are posting content on TikTok every other day to every day with the patch coming out. I've been posting for about a month or so, give or take. If you want to follow there for content or, updates on 10.2 PTR stuff or funny videos, all that, also a link up here. It would mean a lot. We're trying to get to 1K followers for a handful of reasons and all that, as well as Instagram and all that. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into all the Warlock changes. So we're going to look at changes today, talk about them, discuss them a little bit, and talk about the tier bonuses. Tomorrow should be a tier bonus combat video. Maybe the day after, damage testing video, builds video, a demo review video. We've got a lot to talk about because there's some big changes to demo and some to Destro and Aff. Alright, so getting into all the changes here, we're going to look at the changes for each spec, and then also look at the actual tier bonus for each spec. I think it's important to sort of talk about them both and compare the changes to the tier bonus and how they interact, and all that stuff. Now, Affliction really didn't get a whole lot of changes in 10.2. It got a decent bit in 10.1.5, which I think Affliction at this current point is probably the best version you're going to see for a Rapture-based Affliction. Siphon Life could change. It didn't change. It could. They could have changed ID and buffed it. They did not. Tuning is still going to come for every spec, so we'll see where that goes. But the only Aff change is to Grand Warlock's design. A talent you don't really play in the first place, but this is a universal talent change for Aff, Demo, and Destro. They've changed the way Grand Warlock's design works. It now reduces the cooldown of Dark Lair and Tyrant, Dark Lair, Tyrant, Infernal by a baseline amount. So, meaning that instead of having a cooldown reduction per shard spent or whatever, it is now just baseline 30-second reduction for Affliction, basically making your Dark Lair a minute and a half if you want this damage profile. Chances are pretty high you probably don't. You haven't played it anywhere since you had Wilfred's as an option since Legion. It's not very good for Affliction because Dark Lair is not very strong. But either way, it is there. It's an option, and that is the only Aff change. Tuning might come, and we'll see where it goes. Unfortunately, no changes in the class tree. I'm pretty disappointed about that, but hopefully things come in later builds. I don't know. We'll see. So the tier bonus for Aff. It's probably the best one out of all three. I give it like a B. B plus maybe. We'll see where it goes. But it's a bit more relevant, I'd say, in rating than it is Mythic Plus. So the 2-set, Soul Rot deals 15% increased damage and lasts an additional 4 seconds. Soul Rot is baseline 8 seconds, 12 with here because you're playing your 2-piece. So it is a forced talent tier bonus like we had last year. For the most part, looking at Aff, you're probably going to play Soul Rot in most settings. You play it in the Malevolent Visionary build, and with it being your bonus, it really isn't that big of a change either way. Now, it lasts longer and deals more damage, which is solid. The cool thing about it lasting longer, I mean, you have an even longer window with your Dark Lair extension, which is nice. And the 4-piece also gives extensions, right? It says Soul Rot causes your next 3 casts of Malefic Rapture within 12 seconds to deal 50% increased damage and extend the duration of your Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, Unstable Affliction, Haunt, Vile Taint, and Phantom Singularity by 2 seconds. Now, this means that it's not every Rapture you cast. It's only the 3 Raptures that will be buffed by 50%, right? So that's a 6-second duration increase to all your dots. It adds up. It actually feels pretty good. It feels good. It's a damage increase, but the big thing is those Raptures. 50% more damage is big. And if they crit, that's even bigger. Augmentation buffs, all that, whether you like Evoker or not, it's a thing. Raptures are going to hit pretty hard. Now, one thing here, this tier bonus is not applicable, really, in Mythic Plus in seed-based AoE, which is what you're doing as Affliction, pretty much. I mean, in AoE, you're spamming seed with Doom Blossom, right? They need to add a Seed of Corruption clause to this. Soul Rot causes your next 3 Malefic Rapture or Malefic Rapture or Seed of Corruption cast within 12 seconds to extend dots. It'd be fine. It still wouldn't give you an agony like permanent extension with Vital Tank because it's back to being half a minute cooldown, but it would give you 6 seconds basically of additional dots every mob, Mythic Plus. It would actually feel really good. I think it's certainly worth adding a Seed of Corruption clause onto this, because currently, I mean, you're not going to spam Rapture or Mass AoE and Plus, maybe in like 3 or less targets, depending on what you're doing and things. You're playing Doom Blossom, but there's not a whole lot of AoE applicability here. There really isn't any. But if they add Seed, this feels like a pretty well-rounded bonus. Soul Rot's played in most settings for AF. It'll feel fine in general, and there are some potential talent builds that, depending on if you're playing Singularity like this, which is simming better in single target now that the APL is fixed, you can even play a point in Soul Eater's Gluttony, only 1 point in Visionary, possibly in single target. We'll see where it goes, testing this out over the next few days to get a perfect sync on Singularity and Vital Taint as long as your UA does not fall on the target. So overall, this bonus feels fine. I'm down for it. AF still feels like AF. The damage seems relatively solid. We'll test it more over the next few days and look at it in combat and things, but it's fine. Not incredibly flashy, but it's quality of life. You're typically playing with Soul Rot anyways, and your dots last a long time. If those Raptures crit, or you're getting buffed by Aug Evokers or whatever, those Raptures are also probably going to crush, because you're playing Soul Rot with Singularity or Vital Taint and a slew of other dots as well. So looking at Demonology here, shifting gears. Demonology is the spec that has gotten the most changes. I'm going to be honest, I always keep feedback, like I try to keep it neutral and look at both sides of things, but I am very disappointed. I'm sad. I'm sad about Demonology. We'll get into this more in a video, probably this weekend or early next week. I think it deserves its own video. There's a lot to cover here, but we're going to get into it. So Demonology's damage profile is currently too reliant on Nether Portal and Tyrant Windows. I agree. In Guardians of the Dream 10.2, we're redistributing this power to other parts of Demonology's rotation and decoupling the synergy between those two cooldowns so they can stand on their own rather than being dependent on one another. We still want Nether Portal and Demonic Tyrant to be impactful. Powerful cooldowns is not the only source of meaningful output as Demonology Warlock. I feel like... Let's just read it. So Gul'dan's Ambition has been redesigned. When Nether Portal ends, you summon a Pit Lord that serves you for 10 seconds. So it gives you a Pit Lord, but you've lost the Soul Glutton stacks. Your Pit Lord does probably about half the damage it used to, if not less. They've nerfed the Pit Lord extremely. About a 50% nerf for that, unfortunately. Grand Warlock's design has been redesigned. So this is a buff in a sense. This is the Grand Warlock's change, similar to AF. It gives you a baseline 1 minute Tyrant. Now, Tyrant, even like in Shadowlands, is like a minute 4, minute 5. Currently, it's like a minute 8, I think, with Grand Warlocks being where it is in 10.1. This is actually a buff to Tyrant. It's a baseline 1 minute Tyrant. This is actually solid if you want to play it. It's legitimately just 1 minute and that's it. Solid change. That's cool, I guess. It works out well. But unfortunately, not much else is like I'm really excited about here. So Ner'zhul's Volition has been redesigned. This is the ability that gave you a chance to summon an extra demon from your portal and all that kind of stuff. Demons summoned from your Nether portal deal 15 and 30% increased damage. And just to show you, I mean, it's sitting right here. Here it is. Here's the Pit Lord. No longer has stacks from Ner'zhul's and all that and everything. They're just sort of there. This seems okay, but we'll get into that in a little while as to why it's still pretty mediocre. New talent, Volatile Fiends. Implosion deals 10% increased damage. Bioscourge Bombers deals 20% increased damage. And your spells now have a chance to summon a Bioscourge Bomber. This has replaced Bloodbound Imps. Bloodbound Imps is just gone. Less demonic core generation, sort of harkening back to 10.1.5 changes, or whatever that patch was, where they're trying to nerf demonic cores. You can feel it now. You can feel it. It's not as fluent. But either way, it's there. Implosion damage buff. It might make Bombers competitive in AoE comparatively to Strength. We'll see where that goes. Gotta test it out this weekend. Not really sure, but there's that. Summoning Demonic Tyrant. Sorry about that. Summon Demonic Tyrant has been redesigned. Summon a Demonic Tyrant to increase the duration of your Dreadstalkers, Vile Fiend, Felguard, at up to 10 Wild Imps for 15 seconds. Your Demonic Tyrant increases the damage of affected demons by 15% while damaging your target. So, this is a lot to dissect. They have nerfed Tyrant. They've nerfed it a good bit with Nether Portal as well. So, they basically whitelisted and blacklisted pets that get duration increase from your Tyrant. I believe it also the wording also implies that it only buffs these pets with a damage increase. So, instead of having, sometimes you have like 12 imps out, maybe a little more, depending on what you were doing. Or like if you chained a lot of imps from like one pack to the next imp plus, and then ripped a huge, like, 15 imp tyrant or whatever, it's gonna buff 10 imps and extend 10 imps. That's it. Dreadstalkers, Vile Fiend, Felguard get extensions and buffs, but big thing here, no Nether Portal Demon buffs. No Nether Portal Demon extensions. So while this might seem decent, whatever it is, the thing that buffs portal pets, wherever it went in here, I don't even know. This. When you're not getting extensions on them or tyrant buffs anymore, Portal lost a lot of value, and this just does not feel like what Demonology is. Like, why? It just feels like it's just too much. Like we're having the whitelist and blacklist pets that are getting buffed by things because synergy's too strong. It's just not working. It's just not working anymore. Like, it's just whatever. It's not working. Like, there has to be another way to do this, But on top of that, Reign of Tyranny has also been redesigned. Active wild imps grant 1 stack of demonic servitude. Greater demons grant 3, up to 15 stacks. So they've capped demonic servitude. Now they've given it a damage increase to 10%. I believe it's. I'm actually gonna load retail right now and just double check. I believe it's 7% on retail right now. So there's a bit of a buff to that. But THD also mentioned that there's less baseline damage increase on Reign of Tyranny from, like, they removed the baseline damage increase from Reign of Tyranny. I'm going to check right now, but either way, capping Reign of Tyranny at 15, awkward, because, I mean, my tyrants are typically 21, 24 power-wise, and even with, like, the raw 10% buff per pet or per stack of demonic servitude power versus 7%, I believe it is on retail, it's still, Tyrant still is nerfed. So they've nerfed Tyrant, they nerfed Reign of Tyranny, they've nerfed Portal, they've nerfed Pit Lord, they've nerfed Duel's Volition, and there's there's less synergy between them all by a decent bit. To check Portal on retail, I'm gonna check right now. Sorry about this, is awkward, but we'll check Reign of Tyranny right here. Reign of Tyranny. It is 7%, right, on retail instead of 10%. But that demonic tyrant deals 40% additional damage clause, nowhere to be found. So they've nerfed tyrant as well. It's nerfed. It's nerfed. It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. Inner demons can no longer has chance to spawn an extra demon. It still spawns imps in combat, but that random like dog that it might have spawned, like a portal demon, doesn't spawn it anymore. Demonic Core is now learned passively whenever you take Demon Bolt, which is fine. They buff Shadow Bolt by 30%, Demon Bolt by 15%, Vile Fiend by 15%, which has been buffed like 8,000% by now, and Bloodbound Imps have been removed. So a lot of this feels like what was going to happen in 10.1.5 has just been pushed back to 10.2. There's still Demonic Knowledge around, but it's been nerfed. Bloodbound Imps is gone. Portal's been destroyed. Reign of Tyranny is probably not very good anymore. I will save I'm not like doomsaying or anything. I'm always pretty neutral when it comes to feedback and things, but I was really disappointed in Demo today. Now I will say, in current testing, things will change on PTR. Like, there's going to be tuning, all that kind of stuff, raid testing, but Demonology, it was behind Destro and AF and damage testing by 30 to 40k. It is probably the worst spec in the game right now. Because we talked about a month or two ago, losing Tier Set, Clash Trinket, Iridius Fragment, Power Infusion was changed today. Losing all your external power, all your borrowed power, makes Demonology bad in the first place, or not as good in the first place. And these nerfs just hurt even worse. It's like just, yeah. So we'll see where it goes. We'll talk about it more in a few days, but I just feel like it's just sad. Like, you've had the nerf Ner'zhuls, you've had the nerf Tyrant's interaction with Portal. These pets don't get extended anymore. They're not buffed anymore. Pit Lord's been gutted. It's doing half the damage it used to. We had the nerf Reign of Tyranny. We lost the stack. We've capped the stacks. We've whitelisted and blacklisted demons for Tyrant. You can't. It feels like it's fundamentally just not working. And like, don't get me wrong. Listen, it's much harder building and balancing trees than people think it is. 100%. Credit where credit's due. But it just feels like to me, Demonology has gotten just like progressively worse since the start of 10.0. And like, once again, like, tuning is tough. Balancing is all that tough. And I agree with Blizzard that the peaks and valleys are too much. But I feel like at this point, we're having to whitelist and blacklist and cut synergies between talents like Tyrant and Portal and Pit Lord and Ner'zhuls and Reign of Tyranny. And just like, we're limiting all these synergies Demo doesn't feel like Demo. You're a master summoner. You summon pets and buff them. But if I summon a dog from Portal, it's not buffed. If I summon an 11th imp, it's not buffed. If I do, it just feels like it's just lost, right? We're just lost. I don't know. Like, I personally don't know where to start. So yeah, the tier bonus for Demonology. So now, it is incredibly undertuned right now. It's probably not even working. The 2 set says Demobolt now applies a Doom brand that explodes after 20 seconds. A Doom brand is not Doom. There's no correlation to Doom there. It is basically a dot that's applied for 20 seconds whenever you cast Demonbolt on a mob, dealing shadow damage. The shadow damage is grotesquely undertuned. It'll be buffed. Demonbolt and Hand of Gul'dan reduce the duration of the primary target's Doom by 1 second, or Doom brand by 1 second. So you want to hit your target with Hand of Gul'dans and Demonbolts to lessen the duration of the effect, to pop it more often. And the 4-piece, Hand of Gul'dan damage increased by 15%. When Doom brand explodes, you have a chance to summon a Doom Fiend, which is the Doom Guard, actually pretty cool, that blasts your target for shadow damage every 3 seconds or 15 seconds. Once again, no synergy with Tyrant or anything, because, I mean, well, they've whitelisted and blacklisted things. So there's that. Now, the damage is incredibly undertuned. Doom brand was like 0.5% of my damage in a single target. It just hasn't been tuned yet. And the 4-piece, when it procs, it's like a less than 10% proc chance. It doesn't proc, but it'll probably be buffed at some point. It's cool. Doesn't really synergize with Demo anymore because it's cool, but it doesn't really synergize with anything. If that makes sense. But the one thing is that I've noticed in AoE, you can actually spread. You can have multiple Doom brands active at once. I've had 2 Doom Guards active at once. You can just cycle Demon Bolts on different mobs, like in an AoE setting. But Hand of Gul'dan splash damage does not reduce them all. It's only the mob you're targeting with Demon Bolt, but also Hand of Gul'dan. They need to change the 2 set. I'd like to see it changed to be Demon Bolt, sure, on like the target you're hitting, but have Hand of Gul'dan splash damage affected. So if I'm hitting one mob, but it splashes the other 3 or whatever, it reduces them all. However many Doom brands that I have active. At the same time, you could just make it that Hand of Gul'dan applies Doom brand instead of Demon Bolt, because like it would harken back to like Hand of Doom without being Hand of Doom, which everybody loved. It would feel a lot better. Because I'm gonna be honest, we'll look at it in a couple days in another video, but like trying to like tab target and balance 3 or 4 different Doom brands and plus on multiple mobs by weaving in Demon Bolts in different mobs and Hand of Gul'dan in different mobs. We're trying to implode and set up tyrants and dogs and kick and stun and sap and sheep and fear. It's literal brain surgery. And yeah, so it needs damage buffs, it needs proc buffs, and it likely needs some kind of mechanical change. But I mean, having a Doom Guard out is pretty cool. So we'll see where Demonology goes. It's probably run a little longer for Demonology in this section, I'm sorry. But the big thing is like I said, Demo's gotten a lot of changes. A lot of them just feel like it just feels like Demonology is unsolvable with Portal being a thing. It really does. I get what Blizzard's trying to go for. I don't fault them for going this angle in a sense, but like I just think that Portal's not the way anymore. If you're having to like whitelist and blacklist demons and remove synergies from Portal and Tyrant and Pit Lord and Ner'zhul's, just remove Portal. Make it a Demon Bolt row. Make it a Decimating Bolt row. Make it Decimating Bolt, Shard of Annihilation, Stolen Power. 1, 2, 3, done. Just because this is just not gonna be fun. You know, it just feels like it can be so much cooler, but it's just, you know, but we'll see what happens. And in the end, if they like Demo's way underperforming now, it's gonna be buffed a considerable amount. A lot of this raid is patchwork based again, like Aberrus. And in the end, if they buff Demonology to where it's still strong with these, you know, anti-synergies being in place, you'll still play it. But it just feels like it could be so much more. And you're a master summoner, but only when you have 10 imps out and only with Dreadstalkers and Vile Fiends and Felguards, not your Portal, not your Pit Lord, not random summons, and yeah. Okay, moving on to Destruction here. So Destro didn't get a whole lot of changes, but for those that didn't like Madness, good news, Madness is gone. So new talent, Chaos Bringer. Chaos Bolt damage increased by 8%, 15%. Rain of Fire by 5 and 10. Shadow Burn by 5 and 10. There's 2 ranks, which is why it's 8 and 15, you know, so on and so forth. They've also buffed Chaos Bolt by 15% baseline. Now, Grandwalk's design also gives you a baseline, just 2-minute Infernal, which is like a bit of a nerf to Destro, honestly. Like, there were times in Freehold and Brackenhide where you had a lot of sustained, consistent AoE, where you'd have a sub 2 minute Infernal. You had like a 1 minute Infernal, like a minute and a half Infernal, in that mass sustained AoE. So honestly, this is probably a bit of a nerf to Destro in mass AoE and things, but I mean, even if 2 minute Infernal versus 3 minute Infernal still feels pretty good. It's like 2 different specs, so that's solid, I guess. I don't know, it's sort of whatever. So Madness has been removed. We're removing Madness to the Azog here and introducing a new talent, Chaos Bringer, that increases the output of Chaos Bolt, Shadow Burn, and Rain of Fire. Additionally, we're adding damage to Chaos Bolt baseline. And we're doing this specifically to decrease how penalizing movement can feel as a Destruction Warlock, while also making these spells feel more impactful. This is a fine change. They could have done just a longer duration on Madness. It's fine. So you're losing the haste. Let me get on retail here as well. You're losing the haste increase from Madness. Let me read this too. Good lord. You're losing like the cast time reduction from Madness, but you're gaining 5% raw Chaos Bolt damage. And keep in mind that first Chaos Bolt you cast that's not buffed by Madness will still, like if you're playing on retail, will have full value in 10-2, right? Because this first Chaos Bolt that you cast to get the buff up, it is not like a fully buffed Chaos Bolt. That makes sense, right? So 25% currently on retail and a 20% cast time reduction. Rain of Fire being 25, Shadow Burn being 25. They buffed Chaos Bolt on PTR by 15% baseline to compensate for a couple of reasons. They did not buff Rain of Fire or Shadow Burn though. So Shadow Burn's 15%. Sorry, 5 and 10, and Rain of Fire is 5 and 10 as well, down from 25 and 25. So I'm hoping they end up buffing Rain of Fire and Shadow Burn as well next week, because that's going to be awkward. We'll see where it goes. Not really sure, but that's a bit interesting. But either way, here is a new ability. Chaos, let me swap specs here. It is called Chaos Bringer, like I said. Honestly, you could have gone 2 different ways. You could have just increased the duration of Madness, or you could have done something like this. Either are fine. People are complaining that it sort of decreases the skill ceiling of Destro a little bit, but honestly, Destro's skill ceiling is not very high in the first place. It's fine. Sort of is what it is. It feels a little bland to me, but it's a fine change for now. In the end, like, Destro is more mobile and things. Partially due to this build is interesting here, but I'll explain why in a second. And also, partially due to its tier bonus. So Destro's tier bonus, 2-set, Immolate damage increased by 20%. Immolate periodic damage has a chance to grant a charge of Dimensional Rift. So you are, like Soul Rot and Affliction, you're playing Dimensional Rift next tier. If you're activating your tier bonus currently, right? Now, off the bat here, I'm going to say right now, Dimensional Rift has very little applicability in Mythic Plus. Similar to Soul Rot. It has very little applicability. Sorry. The 4-piece Dimensional Rift can now summon a powerful Flame Rift, which fires 20 searing bolts that deal damage to its targets, an additional 1,168 fire damage over 10 seconds to nearby enemies. It's sort of channel Demon Fire. There's a little bit of AoE to it, but like, it's really, really small AoE. It's the Flame Rift that you got from, I think it was the tier bonus or something like that in Legion. It's the big fire Flame Rift. It's pretty cool. We'll look at it in a couple of days, damage-wise and things here. I just don't have it all set up right now. It's cool. I like Dimensional Rifts. I ran a sim comparing my retail character to my, comparing Chaos Incarnate and Dimensional Rift on retail. Chaos Incarnate is ahead by 2.5k DPS roughly. I'm playing a lot of Mastery gear. You can probably lessen that gap if you play more Crit Haste gear. But either way, if you want your tier bonus in 10-2, you're playing Dimensional Rift. Now, Rift is very cool. I like Rift. I think it's cool. They need to buff it a bit more likely to make it relevant, but I will say the proc chance on the 2-piece to reset Dimensional Rift's cooldown is actually pretty high. It seems like it's about 3 to 4 procs per minute. I got a lot of Dimensional Rift resets, like 3 to 4 per minute. I got 9 over the course of, I think 9 or 10 over the course of like 3 minutes. It's actually pretty high. So Dimensional Rift grants you 3 shard fragments whenever you cast it. At the same time, it is a little bit more mobility in a sense, right? If you're moving, you can cast a Rift. If you have one pooled or whatever, you probably do from time to time. And there's that. So I like Rift. I think it's cool. But I think the biggest issue, if you're a plus enjoyer as Destro, is that the build most are playing now looks like this. You're playing Infernal, Crashing, Grand Warlocks, Ritual, Master Rituals, and Avatar, Purple Infernal with Chaos Bringer. There's no talent points left for this node. And if you were in this node, you take Chaos Incarnate over Dimensional Rift because of what it does in AoE with your Mastery and things, right? If you want this node, you can maybe pull your Purple Infernal and hop into here. But once again, you probably want Chaos Incarnate instead. So it's interesting. I like Rift. I think it's cool. I don't love being forced into certain talents, and this is a very Rift is cool, but it is a hard talent to acquire for a handful of builds. If you're playing a single target build, you can just go like this and just grab Dimensional Rift if it's better. That's fine. Might still play Chaos Incarnate and have it cleave settings and all that for the max mastery bonus. We'll see where it goes. And there's also this build, which, I mean, I've seen a little bit in Plus recently, that plays Chaos Incarnate on retail, 2-minute Infernal, Crashing Chaos, Grand Warlocks, Ritual, nothing else here, but you get Embers, one of these two, Power Overwhelming and Madness. Now you could just say, hey, I don't want this anymore, and you go back to the old build as well, just play this, which is literally the old build we played in 10.0. Both are interesting. We'll see what happens. Probably the best change, though, like memes aside, that Blizzard made today was to change the talent trees. So if I try to remove a point, let's say here in Backlash, it doesn't remove the entire tree. It says, yo, these points are still here, but you got to spend a point here to unlock them again. So I put this point here, and they're all back. So, like, huge quality of life increase. Awesome to see. Destro tier bonus, though. If you're a Rift fan or you're mainly raiding and doing PvP, I'm sure it's insane for PvP. It's fine for raiding for the most part, but if you're an M+er and really enjoy that, it's going to be awkward. Probably even more awkward than CDF, because there was some applicability here last patch. We'll see where it goes. I don't know. But yeah, I guess overall, the Madness change is probably fine. It's, I guess, a bit better. You can launch Chaos Bolts whenever you want. To keep in mind, burn to ashes stacks and don't, drop them. Tier bonus, I give it like a, probably like, I don't know. I have to play with it more. For rating, probably like a B. It's probably fine. But if you're doing plus, probably like a C-. It's just not really applicable in Mythic Plus. Very much. Unless, also, the Rifts need to be buffed. They're not incredibly strong. They need to buff them all. At least buff the Big Fire Rift from the 4-piece, but likely need to buff them all. They're not incredibly strong. So, but yeah, those are the changes for today. We will get into some videos over the next couple of days looking at it in combat. I just haven't set everything up yet with builds and everything, as well as like damage testing tomorrow. If you want to see that, check back then. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. I will say that Demonology does look sort of doom and gloom right now, systematically and things, but tuning can still come. And if tuning ends up making Demonology good, it'll still be good. Might not be as enjoyable to play. We'll see where it goes. But at the same time, I've heard a lot of classes are sort of like, about their tier sets. We'll know more in raid testing, which is hopefully next week. But yeah, overall, AF seems fine, solid, about where it is now. Destro seems pretty decent in rating. A lot of the fights are good for Destro. And Demo, well, we'll see where it goes. So thanks for watching, guys. That wraps it up. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and it answered the questions you might have had about, I guess, the Warlock changes heading into patch 10.2 PTR. Like I just said, tuning is going to come. More changes are going to come. I'm hoping we get some changes to the class tree. I'm not stuck with like Grim Feast or whatever it is in the capstone. They need to cap Inquisitor's Gaze, like with procs and Battle Protection. I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but yeah, hopefully raid testing next week and we get a better feel for where classes are. So, like I always say, week course add-ons and profiles. You want any of them? Links to Twitch and Discord down below. We're all for free for you guys. At the same time, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons before we end the video for all the support on Patreon, guys. Thank you a million times. I really appreciate it, like always. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, there should be a link up here as well as down below in the video description. And like I said, with 10.2 PTR being pretty fleshed out already, having tier bonuses available for testing, the 10.2 Warlock PTR spreadsheet will be going live probably in a week or two. Honestly, the tier 3 Felguard rank of that gets early access to it if you want. And yeah, also TikTok, shameless plug, if you want to go follow there, be a huge help. Posting videos there every other day. With PTR amping up, be posting even more. So I feel like overall I was pleasant. I feel like, I don't want to use the word pleasantly, maybe a little bit. Destro and AF feel fine. They feel good for the most part. They feel like they do it on retail. Destro and AF are pretty solid on retail now without externals. If you exclude like external parsons and stuff and PI and all that, Destro and AF crank. In this raid tier, we'll look at it probably next week a little bit. I already read over the bosses. A lot of patchwork. Again, Destro's pretty good at patchwork. AF also pretty solid sustaining wise. And there's some fights with the ad spawn on. Great Destro cleave fights. So we'll see what happens. But Warlock, like toolkit wise, looks pretty decent here. And let's be honest, like demo tuning is going to come 100%. They're not going to leave Demonology in a just 30k deficit from AF and Destro, but where it lands, I don't know. We'll see. So fingers crossed, more things coming over the next few weeks. Likely testing this coming week as well, which I'll be streaming on Twitch, and I'll have it up here if you guys want as well. If you like the video, hit the like and sub buttons below. Helps out a ton. And that being said, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.